On August 25th, 2024, AEW All In from Wembley Stadium in London takes place, which is AEW's biggest event of the year. It's their second annual show, and this year looks to be way better than last year, which is already an incredible card. With a lot of great storylines and many potential dream matches to happen, Sunday looks like it could be a really incredible show. Well, I'm Josh from Just Smash. Let's figure it out. Willow Nightingale and Tomohiro Ishii versus Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway. Now this match is going to take place on the 0 Hour pre-show. I think this match will be a lot of fun. Obviously, Stokely Hathaway is not a traditional pro wrestler, but he's a really funny character on the show. He's no Tomohiro Ishii, obviously, but Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale have had a pretty incredible feud the past several months. I think this match is just a means to an end to get to the blow-off match at All Out in 2 weeks. I think here we're going to see Willow Nightingale and Tomohiro Ishii pick up the win. I think Stokely Hathaway is pretty much in the match so he can take the pin to protect Chris Statlander for the eventual blow-off between her and Willow. Another prediction I have for the 0 Hour show, or maybe even the potential main card, is the idea of a Saraya Open Challenge. Obviously formerly known as Paige in the WWE. Saraya came to AEW a couple years ago and really lit the world on fire initially and has kind of tapered off since then. But recently she's been talking about having an open challenge at Wembley or just doing something to get on the card at Wembley. And of course, if that happens, I think it would be accepted by none other than the returning Jamie Hayter, former AEW Women's World Champion who's been out with an injury for almost 2 years now. I think this could be a really cool moment for Jamie Hayter to come back in her hometown and get a really cool pop. And it could also be cool for Saraya to get one more shot at appearing at Wembley. Now, that match hasn't been announced, but you never know. I figured I'd throw it in there anyway because it seems like a possible thing. Next up, we've got the Casino Gauntlet match, which has pretty much become AEW's version of the Royal Rumble. The main differences here, though, is in the Royal Rumble, coming in later in the match serves to your advantage. In the Casino Gauntlet match, coming in first serves your advantage because this match will be decided by pinfall or submission. So essentially the rules are 2 guys start in the ring, and every, I think, 3 minutes, a new guy comes out and adds to the match. Now, if you're first, you can win the match at any point. If you're 21st, you might not even get to enter the match because the match could end before you even come in. This is the third one that AEW's done. The first 2 were both won by Will Ospreay, who's wrestling MJF for the International Championship. On Dynamite, Orange Cassidy won a match to qualify to be the first entrant in the Casino Gauntlet. I don't know that a Casino Gauntlet has gone to a full 21 wrestlers. I think it's ended early both times. But because it's Wembley, because it's All In, and because this is my prediction show and I just want to have fun, we're going to see if we can guess all 21 entrants. I think if there's any time to do all 21 entrants in this match, it's probably All In. First up, we have Orange Cassidy. We know he comes out first. This is a common thing in WWE. Sometimes they'll do a match to reveal who the first person in the Royal Rumble is. So this is pretty commonplace for a match like this. And that's why for the second entrant, I'm going to predict the first surprise of the night, Ricochet. I think Ricochet is going to make his AEW debut at All In as number 2 in this match to really put the shine on him and make him a big deal right off the bat. I think by putting him up against one of AEW's top stars in Orange Cassidy is a great way to solidify him as a main eventer immediately, and we could get a cool couple minutes between Ricochet and Orange Cassidy. Third up, because Ricochet and Orange Cassidy are smaller dudes that are very fast-paced workers, I felt like for the third pick we should have a bigger guy, so I went with the Beast Mortos, who has really been showing out on Collision with Roderick Strong as of recently. From there, we have Kyle O'Reilly, who's Orange Cassidy's buddy in the conglomeration. I think he's mainly going to come out and attack the Beast Mortos, work together with Orange Cassidy, which would then lead to our 5th entrant, Roderick Strong. Roddy Strong and Kyle O'Reilly have history that goes way back to the days of ROH, into the Undisputed Era and NXT, into AEW. They've been telling a story between the conglomeration and Roderick Strong and his cronies, so I think this would be a cool way to continue that. From there, we would have the final member of the conglomeration, Mark Briscoe, coming in at number 7, kind of evening the odds between things. Having the conglomeration versus the Beast Mortos and Roderick Strong, and also Ricochet there, I think would be a pretty cool showdown, which would then lead to my next entrant, a returning Miro at number 7. We haven't seen Miro in a while. We kind of never really know what's up with him, whether he's injured or just sat at home or who knows? Maybe this is an unrealistic entry because we don't know the injury status of Miro, but it is my show, and I want to have some fun. I think Miro's going to come in, clean house, tear up both sides of the ring, and really just kind of destroy things until we have our next entrant, which would be a surprise return of Keith Lee. Once again, we don't know Keith Lee's injury status currently. We know he's been out with an injury, but it's been a while, so maybe he's ready to come back. Maybe they were saving it for a big return at All In. But I think having Miro and Keith Lee come in at the same time and have a giant, big meaty men slapping meat situation could be a pretty cool moment in this match. After that, we have a legend appearance with Dustin Rhodes, who has recently won some ROH titles, the ROH Trios title and the ROH Tag titles with Sammy Guevara. He's been showing out on Collision recently, and I think this would be a cool spot and a cool opportunity for him to perform at Wembley. From Dustin Rhodes, we would have Hologram, who has also debuted on Collision recently and been a really cool addition to the roster. I think we could see a lot of cool spots between Hologram and Ricochet, doing some really cool stuff, showing off what they both could do. And once again, I think this match could really just be an opportunity for Ricochet to get introduced or reintroduced to the AEW audience. From there, we would have Rush, who was a pretty big deal throughout the Continental Classic, came back and feuded with MJF earlier in the year. I don't believe we've seen him since, so I think this could be a cool opportunity for Rush to return and get some shine in Wembley. After Rush, I think we could get a surprise appearance from a hometown kid in Michael Oku. He's a pretty great wrestler that has been making a name for himself on the British Indies. He appeared before AEW Dynamite on Wednesday in a dark match. I think this could be a really cool featured spot for him to appear in. From there, we would have Sammy Guevara, who is obviously a polarizing figure in the AEW landscape, but he didn't get to wrestle on All In last year. Instead, he managed Jericho against Will Ospreay, and Sammy just recently made his return to AEW TV working with Dustin Rhodes. I think this could be a cool spot for Sammy Guevara to show up and kind of reintroduce himself to the audience. From there, we have Top Flight's Dante Martin, who is always awesome in these multi-man matchups. He can fly as high as anyone and show everyone what he can do on a stage like this. This one I'm not too sure about, but I figured throwing Kyle Fletcher out there would make sense. He's been positioned pretty strongly on Dynamite as of recently against MJF and Will Ospreay. I think this could be a really cool opportunity for him, but it kind of seemed like he got written off of TV for a while when he wrestled MJF, so kind of taking a risk with this one. After that, we have Brian Cage, another huge, awesome, high-flying wrestler in AEW that has the power that matches Miro and Keith Lee. I think there could be a lot of really cool spots between those wrestlers in this match. Next up, we have Hangman Adam Page, who a lot of people think is going to win this match, and honestly, he's in a pretty good position to win this match. He's been in a blood feud with AEW World Champion Swerve for several months now, and this really seems like the avenue for him to get his title shot against Swerve because the match is for a title shot in the future. After Hangman Page, we have fellow Elite member Kazuchika Okada, the Continental Champion. I think me and a lot of other people kind of are scratching our heads about the fact that Okada was left off the All In card. It didn't really seem to make too much sense, but I think it's so he could be in this match to serve a greater storyline purpose, which is contribute to the downfall of Hangman Page in this match. They've really been telling the story recently of Hangman and Okada having friction within the Elite, and Okada preventing Hangman from doing the things that he wants to do, and I think ultimately this is going to set up a showdown between the two. At number 19, we have who I think will be the ultimate downfall of Hangman in this match, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett's a legendary pro wrestler who has finally gotten some shine on AEW TV, really solidifying his run as one of the GOATs, and him and Hangman have been telling a really incredible story the past several months, and I think that Jeff Jarrett is ultimately going to cost Hangman Page this match. Number 20, we have Konosuke Takeshita, coming fresh off of his run in the G1 Climax in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's time to reintroduce him to AEW audiences. It seemed like he was really moving up the card fast with his feud against Kenny Omega at last year's All In event. Since then, Takeshita's kind of fallen a bit. I think this is the perfect time to reintroduce him to the company. Lastly, we have the wild card entrant number 21, and who I think will win this match, Jon Moxley. We've not seen Jon Moxley, I want to say, since Forbidden Door when he dropped the New Japan World Championship to Naito, and he's taken a well-deserved vacation since then. But I think this match is a great way for Moxley to come back into things, be the huge wild card return pop at the end, and win the match, ultimately setting up a feud for the future, which we'll get to in a later prediction. Chris Jericho versus Hook for the FTW Championship. Chris Jericho, he's a topic that, when brought up to AEW fans, is going to be one that brings a lot of opinions. A lot of people think that he is well past his prime and that he is an eyesore on television with a lot of his segments, including the recent Learning Tree stuff. A lot of people think that Jericho still got it and that he has a lot to offer to the audience. I am one of those people that thinks that Jericho does have a lot to offer still. I think he can still have a really good match. I don't think this current character is the best of Jericho, though, however. This whole thing has very clearly been a vehicle to get Hook over and to make Hook a star, and I think they've done a pretty good job with it, admittedly. But the problem is we don't need 6-month Chris Jericho feuds. That's just not what we need from him at this point in his career. The Learning Tree has been very hit or miss. Some segments have been good, some have been bad. Ultimately, I think Jericho doing this character at the same time that Matt and Nick Jackson are doing their characters as the EVPs of All Elite Wrestling, I think there's been a lot of conflicting stuff there. Now, the stipulation is that if Hook loses this match, he can never wrestle for the FTW Championship ever again. The FTW Championship is a championship created by Hook's father, Taz, who is a legendary pro wrestler in ECW and WWE. A lot of the story here has been Jericho kind of dunking on Taz and Hook, taking the title from that family and touting it as the For the World Championship as opposed to the F the World Championship. I'm of two minds here. Hook should beat Chris Jericho. I want Hook to beat Chris Jericho. I don't want Hook to be the FTW Championship anymore. I think the FTW Championship has actually been a bit of an anchor on Hook and dragged him down a little bit. Now, if the FTW Championship functioned as an actual hardcore championship within AEW, I think it would be a little bit different, but having it be a championship that doesn't actually represent anything and just kind of attached to Hook at all times doesn't really do anything for him anymore. I think Jericho having the belt and christening it as an actual hardcore championship within AEW that could then go to other talents than Hook isn't a bad idea, but ultimately Hook needs to win this. The Young Bucks versus FTR versus the Acclaimed for the AEW Tag Team Championships. This is another match that has a lot of people not feeling too hot on. Unfortunately, the Acclaimed are not what they used to be. I think a lot of Max Caster's online antics have really taken away from the steam that they once had. FTR is a team that is just dying for a heel turn at this point. They're great baby faces and they still connect with the audience, but I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that the heel run of FTR in NXT and initially in AEW is their best work. The Young Bucks have been doing a really good job with their current characters, but a lot of the problem with it is that they're not actually wrestling that much. They're the tag team champions, and I think they've only defended those belts once since April when they won them. That's a problem for me. We come at a weird impasse with these three teams because fans generally like all three of them, and they're all great in the ring, but they all are in some sort of weird need for a refresh of their characters. Me personally, I want the Young Bucks to win and retain their titles, and I want the Acclaimed to go full heel and feud with FTR on the side, and you could have the Young Bucks start feuding with other teams. The Patriarchy versus Bullet Club Gold versus the House of Black versus Pac, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta in a ladder match for the AEW Trios titles. I think obviously this match was supposed to be Pac and the Lucha Bros against these other three teams, but with news of the Lucha Bros going to WWE fairly soon, it seems like Pac has gotten a bit lost in the shuffle. Pac does have history with Claudio and Wheeler Yuta in the Blackpool Combat Club last year, competing with them in Blood and Guts, but that match ultimately ended with Pac versus Claudio at an ROH pay-per-view, so I don't quite understand how this team makes a whole lot of sense other than let's get Pac on the card and maybe give him a win. The Patriarchy has been on fire since they started. Christian Cage is on one of the all-time best heel runs in AEW. I think everything he touches turns to gold, including the Trios division, which really needed a refresh. Bullet Club Gold is fine. Without Jay White, they are definitely hurting. The House of Black, to me, kind of treads water always. I think Malachi Black would do far better as a singles competitor, but it is what it is. While I think it would be nice for Pac to win in his hometown, ultimately I think the Patriarchy needs to retain the gold here. And with Pac having a match against Will Ospreay or MJF at All Out in 2 weeks, I don't feel the need for him to win the titles. Jack Perry versus Darby Allin in a coffin match for the TNT title. This match has potential to be a sleeper hit of the night. Darby Allin always delivers pretty much in every circumstance, especially in coffin matches. I think Jack Perry is a competitor that has been really underrated. He gets a lot of hate because of the CM Punk thing, which is pretty unfair in my opinion. But since he's come back to the company, I think he's really shown how valuable of a competitor he is. I'm pretty excited for the rest of the Jack Perry TNT title run. I don't think the initial part of it has been too great, but I think this feud with Darby Allin has really reinvigorated it. Now, this is maybe the match that I'm most torn on who's going to win here. It's a coffin match. It's at All In. Darby Allin has all the momentum in the world. It could make sense for him to win this title. But we know that he has a future AEW World Championship match at Arthur Ashe Stadium for Grand Slam in the future, so it doesn't totally make a lot of sense for him to win the TNT title here. On top of that, I don't think Jack Perry needs the legs cut out from under him by losing the title so soon since he won it. Personally, I think Jack Perry should win this match. The defining factor of who's going to win this match, to me, is whether or not Sting makes an appearance. Sting and Darby Allin were a very famous tag team for several years in AEW. Sting just had his retirement match this year with Darby Allin against the Young Bucks, and maybe the greatest retirement match in pro wrestling history. Personally, I think it's too soon to see Sting show up again, especially because Darby was tied to Sting for so long, and it was really great, but Darby needs to stand on his own here. He needs to show that he can wrestle on his own. He needs to show that he can win matches on his own. I think having Sting show up and help Darby win would actually be a detriment to Darby, regardless of how cool the moment would be. I think if that comes a year down the line, sure. But only coming 6 months after Sting retired, I think is just personally too soon. If Sting does show up, I do think that leads to a Darby Allin win, but I'm going to pick Jack Perry here. Mercedes Moné versus Britt Baker for the AEW TBS Championship. This is a dream match for a lot of people. If you look at the inception of AEW to now, Britt Baker has pretty much been the focal point of the women's division, even when she wasn't champion. Mercedes Moné, as Sasha Banks, really solidified herself as one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time, maybe the greatest female pro wrestler of all time. When Mercedes came over to AEW, this is one of the main matches that everybody wanted to see. Sometimes Britt Baker can leave a bit to be desired in ring, but on the mic and in storytelling, she's always at the top of her game. Whereas Mercedes Moné sometimes on the mic leaves a bit to be desired. In ring, she's easily one of the greatest to ever do it. The storytelling for this match has been pretty top-notch, both in ring and on the mic. The addition of Camille to Mercedes' program has actually been a really great one, and I'm really looking forward to this match. I think it's too early for Mercedes to lose the title, although I do think Britt Baker might be the one to dethrone her eventually. But for now, I'm going to pick Mercedes Moné. Toni Storm versus Mariah May for the AEW Women's World Championship. This storyline, which has been building for pretty much a year now, I would say is the best women's storyline in AEW history, and probably one of the top 5 storylines in AEW history, period. They have done a wonderful job building Mariah May as both an in-ring competitor and a character on television, and showing that she could be a world champion. Now, I'm a movie fan. If you've watched the channel, you would know this. I think Timeless Toni Storm has done a really great job at building a character and letting that translate into the ring, while also just being entertaining in every facet of programming. The heartbreaking heel turn of Mariah May on Toni Storm, I think, is one of the best in company history, and really made this match one of the most must-see matches on the card. There's a very real possibility that this match could be the best women's match in AEW history, and it is the match I am most looking forward to on this card. I think Toni Storm has done a great job building the Women's World Championship, but ultimately I think it's time for Mariah May to take the belt from Toni Storm and show us what she can do as champion. MJF versus Will Ospreay for the AEW International Championship. Now, MJF has renamed the International Championship to the American Championship, but ultimately I think that is going to be a very short-term reign. I predict that Will Ospreay will defeat MJF and take the title back in Wembley and turn it into the International Championship once again. MJF is a very polarizing character. I think he's done a good job so far with this reign as American Championship. Ultimately, though, I'm ready for Will Ospreay to beat him, and let's move on to something. Swerve Strickland versus Bryan Danielson for the AEW World Championship. If Bryan Danielson loses this match, he has said that he will retire from in-ring competition forever. Bryan Danielson, in my personal opinion, is the greatest professional wrestler in history. There is no one that I've ever seen wrestle on the level that Bryan Danielson has, and has consistently put on good matches, good character work, good promo work, and this isn't relevant, but just seems like a good dude. Through my pro wrestling fandom, there have been very few wrestlers I've been able to connect with on the level that I have Bryan Danielson, and I know I'm not alone in that. Swerve Strickland has really proven himself to be one of the best wrestlers going today, and one of the best character workers going today. He deserved to win the AEW World Championship months before he did, but won it at the right time and has since given us a pretty incredible reign. I think this match is the perfect match to main event Wembley and All In, and there's a lot riding on it. One being the AEW World Championship, but the other being Bryan Danielson's career. We've known for a while now that Bryan's pretty close to hanging up the boots, but we weren't sure exactly how soon, and he's done enough to sow in some pretty reasonable doubt that this could in fact be his last match. I want Bryan Danielson to win. I think it would be a shame if Bryan Danielson retired without winning the AEW World Championship. I think the AEW World Championship needs Danielson as part of its lineage, and I think it would be a really great gift to Danielson to cap off his career. On the other hand, I could see Swerve Strickland retaining and really solidifying himself as one of the all-time greats, and Danielson putting over an up-and-coming talent on his way out, giving one last pro wrestling performance to us fans in Wembley Stadium in the main event of All In. I'm looking forward to watching the show. I think it's going to be a really good one. I think the card's really great, and I'm excited to see what AEW brings us. They always deliver in these big pay-per-view moments, so I've been Josh from Just Mash. Until next time.